right, artists, brace yourself. This is your very last lesson in computer graphics that you will have to listen to with my voice. We will have a few other breakout lessons at the end of the semester, but this is the last defined by the curriculum video lesson. All right, so we are going to be going over not just layer masks and quick masks, but we're going to also review clipping masks, which we used way back in the type lesson video. But then we're also going to talk about how do you combine these in lots of different ways with other tools to give you more advanced options with the masks. All right, take a deep breath, like I said, because I'm going to go over a lot. If you are one of those people who takes notes, I strongly recommend you do it with this one, because oh my Lanta, we are going to be learning lots and lots in this video lesson. So let's get started by looking at our end product here. So your composition in your collage is going to look something like this, or should look something like this. So you're going to notice lots of different types of softening of edges, lots of layering here. I'm going to show you how we are going to attempt all of this, all using masking options. All right, so let's go ahead and start by going to File, Open. You need to navigate to the Courses folder, Art, Computer Graphic Lessons, Photoshop Lessons. There is a folder in here called Mask 3, and you are going to need all of these files. Now you can open them up one at a time, or you can open up all of them. I'm just going to open up all of them. I'm going to hold down my Shift key. That lets me select all of them, but I don't need that finished one, so I'm going to hold down Control because I want to deselect that, and I'm going to click Open. It's going to take a while. It's going to open up all these different files. So the one that we are going to be starting with is it should be the pattern file. Okay, so locate your pattern file. This is going to be a background layer. Let's immediately save this. Now, if you are saving in the cloud, you'll save in the cloud. If you're saving to your network folder, you're going to save to your network folder. But either way, go ahead and save this. Let's save it as Mask 3 with your name and hit save. Just as a reminder, if you are saving to the cloud, this will autosave. If you are saving to the network folder, you need to make sure you save before you close. Okay. So the first thing that we are going to be doing is I'm going to show you how to fade or use gradations in your mask, so it's not just a sudden stop. So with this file open, we are also going to open up our landscape photo, and we are going to drag that landscape photo right on top of our pattern. And then we can close this file. You no longer need it. Let's resize this using our free transform option. Just want to resize it so it fills that bottom half. You can do wherever you want and click OK to that. Okay, so we want to fade this. I'm going to apply a mask, but I just want to gradually fade this image into this background image. We're going to do a layer mask, so we're going to come over to our layers panel, and we're just going to hit that layer mask button. It's going to apply a mask. There's nothing on the mask right now. We have to apply it. We're going to reset our default colors, white on black, or black and white. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to show you the difference in a little bit here. And we're going to grab the gradient tool. Okay, with your gradient tool, make sure that you are set to white and black. Again, it doesn't matter if it's white versus black. I'm going to show you what that does in a second. And then let's make sure that we are set on the linear option, which is right up here at the top. Now remember, white lets the image show through, black blocks it out. So if we are going from white to black, we want to let the image in and gradually block it out. So if I'm going white to black, I'm going to pull up from the bottom and click and drag. Notice it fades it. Okay, that's a lot. I'm undoing that. I'm going to just I'm not going to drag quite as far. And you just kind of have to play. Now maybe I want to come up even further. I just want to blend that top. There we go. It takes a little bit of playing around to do. So I'm going to show you that one more time. If I go on the opposite way, if I drag white to black, it's going to leave the top and vice versa. So you just have to kind of try it. We just want want to blend that sky in a little bit. All right, I'm just hitting my Control Z. So go ahead and do that so it blends into that sky. All right, good. So that is your linear gradient. Now again, you can fade it more if you want to fade it more. Maybe I want to come back, do it again. You can apply over top as many times as you need to get it to go the right amount. Okay, till you are happy. All right, so I'm going to show you how you can fine tune this. See how I still have a little bit of an edge here? Let's say I do want to soften this a little bit more. This is where I can take my paintbrush tool and I can fade this out a little bit more. So I'm going to grab my paintbrush tool. You do not have to do this, by the way. You can just watch because I'm going to review this again later. I'm going to make my brush a lot bigger. I'm going to take my opacity of my brush way down to like say 18, and I'm just going to brush across that top, and it should soften it. What it's doing is it's putting just a little bit of black down because I've taken that opacity, so it's gradually blending that out. Okay? So if you want to do that, stop the video and do that. All right, so we're going to stick with the gradient tool. We're going to go back to that gradient tool. But this time we're going to use it in a different way. We need to open up the 7 file. That's this file here. And we're going to click and drag that onto our new image, and we can close it. Okay, so find that 7 file. Let's go to Edit, Free Transform, and we're going to make this fairly large. Let's make it about, that large. Actually, no, let's go a little bit larger. We're just going to put a little bit of subtle texture in our background here. We're still doing layer mask, but we're going to use our gradient tool a little differently this time. So we're still going to add a layer mask. We're going to go to our gradient tool. Let's this time go to radial gradient, which is this one here. It's the one that works in a circle. Let's make sure that we, make sure you're set white to black again. Remember, white is going to let it show through, black is going to block it out. So I'm going to start in the center of this, and I'm going to click and drag. It doesn't matter if I drag this way, this way, this way. It's going to go from white to black in whatever direction in a circular fashion. So notice you start to see the pattern, and it gradually fades. Now if I want to do it a little bit more subtle or sudden, I can do it that way. The longer I drag it, the slower that transition is going to happen. All right, so go ahead and do that now. So we should see a subtle checkerboard in the background. If you need to move it, you can grab your move tool. I'm just going to move that up a little bit. Actually, I did kind of like it there. I think it's nice. All right, excellent. So that's the gradient tool. So you can use that gradient whenever you want to fade it one way. You can either use the radial, which is this one, the circular, or your linear. Honestly, you can use the diamond, you can use any of those. They all work, okay? So that's using our gradients. You can use other ways to apply layer masks as well. We're going to locate the planet file, and you're going to need this a few times. So don't close this one out. So I'm going to grab my planets, I'm going to click and drag those on. And then I'm just going to drag mine back up. Okay, let's resize our planets. And we're going to click OK. So I want to show you that you can apply a layer mask a different way. This time, we're going to grab our elliptical marquee tool. Make sure there's no feather. And we are going to come to the center of the gray. We are going to click and start dragging outward. And then we're going to hold down 2 keys while I'm holding my mouse down. I'm going to hold down Alt and Shift. Alt means it's going to come from the center, and Shift means it's going to be a perfect circle. If I am a little off-centered, I can hold down my space bar and I can move that selection, okay, while I'm still drawing it. When I'm happy, I release the mouse button first, then my keys. Sometimes I have to just click close. Okay, so now we have the elliptical selection. So do a nice elliptical selection around our planet. Okay, so we have this area selected. If we come to our planet, now if you hit the mask or the layer mask at the bottom, it should mask everything out around that planet. video and do that now. All right, and because it doesn't match really well, let's change the color of our planet. How do we do that? Well, the first thing you have to do is click on the actual image, the thumbnail image in the layer. You have to get off that mask, and then we're just going to go to image adjustments, and let's go to hue and saturation, and let's just change the hue of our planet a little bit. I'm taking my saturation up a little. Not changing a whole lot, is it? There we go. Now we're doing some saturation. Have to really bump that up and click OK. Okay, as promised, we are going to be using that planets. Again, did I close mine? I did. I have to reopen my planets file. Okay, drag that planets file on yet one more time. Let's resize this again. But instead, I just want to show you something just a little bit different. We're going to pick a different planet here. I don't care which planet, any planet other than Saturn. Grab your elliptical marquee tool again, but this time, before you add your selection, I want you to add a feather of 25 pixels, and then go ahead and pick one of your planets. Again, it does not matter. I'm going to pick this one here, and I'm going to click and drag from the center, or however you feel comfortable. I'm going to move that down a little bit. Remember, release the mouse button first, and then your keys. Now we're going to apply that layer mask. Notice it fades it. It's not a sudden stop. It's not as crisp as the other one. Okay, I'm going to just, because I like it better, I'm going to stack mine behind the other one. All right, so we feathered the selection. That's what we've done here. I'm just going to show you what that looks like. If I zoom in, you can see that's not a hard edge. See how it's faded it? So that's another way. If the elliptical marquee isn't, or the elliptical gradient option isn't working for you, you can just grab that elliptical marquee tool, but just set a feather on it, okay? That's all you have to do there. All right, so now we're gonna continue on. Keep moving, keep chugging right along here. We got lots we gotta get through. I wanna show you how you can use other images and other ways to use the black and white option of the mask to use clipping masks. So this is a review of clipping masks. So you need to open up the splat file, which I must have closed mine. Okay, we're gonna open up that splat file. Okay. And we're going to drag on our splat. Right. You can close the splat once you've opened it. We're going to free transform this thing, make it a little bit bigger, and click OK to that. We need to remove the white. Now we're going to cheat here because I just want the black, because I want to show you what black does. This is a straight up black layer. It's black pixels. We're just going to remove the white. So think back to the coloring book lesson. We're going to go up to select color range. We're going to click on the white, and we're just going to hit that delete key because we just want it so that there's just the black, okay? Just the black splat. So you could do this with a brush, you could do it with any other way. I gotta get rid of that. I lost my corner. So on this layer, you want just that black splat. All right, now we need to open up the watercolor file. And we're gonna click and drag this watercolor file onto our image. So we're gonna use that black splat. I'm gonna free transform this and make it a little bit smaller. It's pretty big. We want it to be at least the size of the splat. Okay, so it needs to cover up that splat. And in order for a clipping mask to work, the image needs to be above whatever that black shape, black line, black slash, whatever it is. Oops. So we've got our black splat here. We've got our watercolor layer on top of the black splat. Now, how do we add a clipping mask? Hold down your Alt key as you hover in the layers panel between these two. You should get that little weird little black arrow. Once you click on that, it now has taken that black splat and it has filled it with that image. It's because that splat was black. you can use it as a mask. Anything that's black, whether it's black text, a black shape, a black line, it will work. Okay, so to illustrate this, I'm going to show this to you again. Oops, I must have unlinked those. If you need to, here's the problem with the clipping mask. If you need to move them, you do have to make sure you select both layers before you move it. Okay, so I've just got my splat in here. I'm going to show you, we're going to review, show it to you one more time so you understand how black on any layer can be used as a clipping mask. Let's open up a new image. We're looking for the blue texture file. Oops, mine was already open. Again, we're going to drag that blue texture onto the image here. We just need it to stretch across the entire image, top to bottom, doesn't matter. Okay. Last time we used a black shape to create a clipping mask. This time we're going to use a brush effect. So we're going to paint with a black brush. Let's do that on its own layer. So in the layers panel, we're going to click on the new layer button. It's blank. Let's set our colors back to black and white because we want to paint with black. We're going to grab our brush tool. It's going to be a little bit of review of the brush tool. And we're going to do a scattering option with our brush. So we need to open up our brushes panel. Okay, and click on brush settings. So right now, we just have a basic shaped brush. That's I want you to have a basic round brush. That's all we're looking for here. Under the brush tip shape, we are going to do some spacing here. Okay, so we're going to drag our spacing all the way over till you see some gaps between your circles. And then we're going to click on the scattering option and we're going to scatter that. And if you want, you increase the count. If you want, it's totally up to you. If we click on shape dynamics, you can jitter it, which is just going to change the angles at which they come across. Okay, and then you can close that panel. You can make it as big or as small as you want. I'm going to go just a little bit smaller with my brush size. And now making sure we're on this layer, I'm just going to scatter with that brush. Oops, one thing I forgot. Double check to make sure your opacity is set back to 100 for your brush. And then we're going to scatter with black, okay? It's going to look like we've got some weird polka dots, but go ahead and do that. I'm actually going to, I want to make my brush a little bit bigger because I don't want as many. Okay, so I've got some dots here. We're going to use these black dots to create a clipping mask with this image here. So we need to grab our layer, or with this here. We need to grab our layer 7, which is probably our blue texture layer. Again, make sure that it comes across or that it fills across all of your black dots. And then we're going to apply it as a clipping mask. How do you do that again? Alt, let it hover between the two, and clip it. Now if you want to resize these, you're like maybe they're a little too big, again, we're going to hold down Shift, and we can free transform both the layer and the mask at the same time. So that's your clipping mask. So as a quick review, we've covered how to use the gradients to make masks. We've learned how to use the marquee tools to make masks. And now we've learned how to use just black paint or black pixels to create clipping masks. We're going to move on. So now I'm going to show you a shortcut. Now that I've showed you all that tough stuff, let's do a shortcut. You need to open up the bird in flight file. And we're just going to click and drag that bird on. And you can close that file, you won't need it anymore. Let's make our bird a little bit bigger. That's about appropriate, that's a good size. Now here's where I'm going to show you really cool. This is the AI that Photoshop has now integrated into its software. You need to open up what's called the Properties panel. So you go to Window, Properties. This is going to show up. You may need to expand where it says Quick Actions. I want you to click, make sure you're on the bird layer, click Remove Background. It might take a while. The computer's trying to determine what is the object and what is the background, and it's going to mask out the background. You may even be able to hear my computer kind of really working hard. And notice it's now removed that background. Okay, so stop the video and do that now. All right, so now that I showed you an easy trick, now I'm going to show you a couple things about refining. So let's zoom in on our bird's feathers up here. I want you to notice how it did a pretty good job, but it kind of missed some things. It missed that green. You can still fine tune. So in my layers panel, as long as you click on the mask that's applied to that layer, I can grab my brush tool. Okay, so grab your brush tool. We need to reopen the brushes panel because we got to reset these brushes. So go to your brush settings, turn off the shape dynamics and the scattering. We don't want that on there. Okay. Make our brush way smaller. And now if we're using a sharp edge brush set to black, remember black is going to mask out. Oops, I still have my scattering on. I'm just going to go to a hard edge brush. There we go. So you can go ahead and erase in between the green where it left off. We're just refining that. Okay, so stop the video, do that on. All right, we're going to zoom in really tight on the edge. So I want to show you a trick. So one of the areas where Photoshop artists kind of mess up is they forget the fact that our eyes are really weak. Human eyes are weak, so we don't see edges of things really clearly. So one of the dead giveaways of when something is masked or when you're collaging is hard edges. You want to try to soften your edges a little bit, and there's lots of different ways you can do that. One is by using the selection set with a feather. The other way is to fine tune with a brush. So go ahead and grab your brush tool if you got off on that, got off of the brush tool. And then you can either set your opacity much lower. So let's try this, set it down to say, oh, let's go to 16. And you can brush across the edges a little at a time, and it's gonna soften that. We already did this once. Remember I told you we were gonna be doing it later. But you really wanna soften the edges of your selections of your mask because our eyes wouldn't see that really, really crisp. So that's one way you can do it. You can literally just take the opacity of the brush down. So go ahead and do that on one of the wings. The other way to do it is if you feel like I'm not really good with that method, is you can have your opacity set all the way up to the right to 100%. But instead of painting with black, you paint with gray. Once you double click on that foreground color swatch, it's going to bring out the color picker. Just slide up a little bit to the gray. Gray paints with a lessened opacity. In other words, it's not 100% black, so it's not 100% blocking it out. It's not 100% white, so it's not letting it all the way through. It's letting some of it show through. So that's another way. I think my gray's way too bright. Darker. So you can soften using the gray as well. Me, I like the opacity option. I like just setting it to black and taking the opacity down. That's my favorite way to do it, because then I just kind of keep brushing until it works the way I want. And it works the same way then if I want to erase, I could be like, oh, maybe I erased too much. I just flip it. It still leaves it opacity. I can bring it back then. It's just softening that edge. All right, so take some time. I'm kind of going a little faster than I probably should here. But soften the edges of the wings. Make it a nice big brush. I'm just going to soften that whole edge. I'm just softening so it, because birds' wings you wouldn't see them. They'd be moving so fast, they wouldn't be nice and crisp anyways. All right, so we're softening the edge. So that's using a low opacity brush and or setting the brush to gray. It's just making your mask semi-transparent. That's all it's doing. So it's not 100% opaque, it's not 100% transparent either. All right, I'm going to show you more about this using the gray option. Now, let's zoom out all the way. We need to open the Godzilla file. And we're going to drag Godzilla onto our image. And then you can close the Godzilla file. Let's free transform this. You can make it as big as you want. I want a nice big Godzilla here. And before we apply anything, we're gonna change his color. He's kind of a drab gray. Let's give him a little bit of purple tint. Keep him, or blue, so he kind of fits in. Make him a little bit. There we go. Okay, so let's just tint our Godzilla a little bit. Now we're gonna use that same cheat method. We're gonna open up our properties panel and we're gonna hit remove background again. We're just going to have it pull Godzilla out. Now, both of the image that we used, the Godzilla and the bird one, they had a pretty simple background, but this background remover option works pretty dang well, even if it has a complex background in there, okay? So once you have your Godzilla and he's removed, now he's still kind of, in my opinion, kind of too dominant. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move him down. Oops, don't want to do that. Grabbed the wrong one. No, I don't want to move him that far down. Okay, I lied. Let's just leave him where he is for right now. We're going to move him later. To me, he's just a little too bold. So one way you can soften that is you can click on the layer mask. We're going to grab the paint bucket tool and we're going to set this, we're going to double click on the foreground color swatch and we're going to set it to a very light gray. Very light gray. So somewhere in this range here. And then in making sure you're, again, double check that you're on the thumbnail with the paint bucket, you're just going to click. And it should soften it. Now, if you're like, whoa, that's too much, Control Z it, undo it, and just play with how dark or how light it. Maybe I'm going to go make it even lighter. Because I just want it just slightly softer. Okay, just slightly softer. I want my bird in front of Godzilla. Now I'm going to move him up a little bit. There we go. So now we can see everybody. Right? So that's showing that it's great. I'm going to show you just so you can see it. And I know you're like, gosh, Sherry, you're talking a lot. I am. Trying to show you. Oh, wrong layer. On my Godzilla layer, what it's done is in this area here, it's no longer pure white. It's hard to tell here. There's a slight gray tint that I put in there, so it's just tinting it, that mask, just a little bit, so it's softening the Godzilla, so he's not so opaque. That he's just, it's softening him just a little bit, because that's what would happen to things that are in the distance. Right? So that's using the gray option. We are almost done. Now we're going to review the quick mask option here. So we need to pull on, let me get rid of that. We're going to open our last file, which is the Cityscape file, and we are going to drag that on top. Okay. Let's put it on the very tippy top of our stacking order, and we're going to free transform it. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Let's free transform this so that it stretches across our horizon line. Don't worry, we're going to be removing some stuff here. So it needs to stretch end to end. And then we're going to grab our quick selection tool. And I just want you to paint a very quick selection around the sky. Just select the sky. Then, with this still selected, we're going to grab the rectangle marquee tool, which is up here. We're going to add to this selection. Right now it's just a sky, but I want to select all of this as well. So to add to a selection, what key must you hold down? Hopefully you said shift. So I'm going to hold down my shift key, and you should see there's a little plus I'm going to come to where the horizon line is and I'm going to click and drag across the bottom. So basically what I have is I've selected the top and the bottom because I want to mask these two sections out. I want to mask out the sky and the bottom. So once you do that, then it's just a matter of applying it as a layer mask. Oops, my bad, I forgot to inverse the selection. Glad I made that mistake. So you inverse it and then you apply it. I'm going to move my skyline down so it's now in front of my Godzilla. Let's make this a little bit bigger because I do want my buildings to be taller and bigger than my mountain range. So if yours are not, make yours a little bit bigger. Okay? All right, for a moment, let's just turn off that cityscape layer. And I want to scroll down to our background layer, or sorry, your layer 1, which should be your mountains and sky. We are going to drag a copy of this. Drag a copy of this. Now, unlink the mask because we're going to get rid of that mask. And hit delete. Okay, so it's just that image. I'm going to drag it all the way up to the top. Don't worry, you're going to see what's going to happen here. We're going to go back into our quick mask mode. This is where we're reviewing. So I'm going to go into quick mask mode because I don't need to do I don't have to spend a lot of time. I don't need this later. I'm just using it to make a copy of something. So I'm going to grab my paintbrush tool, making sure my opacity is set to 100. And take your time, but I want you to paint over the mountains. What we're doing, we're using a quick mask because we want to make a selection. We actually want to select the mountains. And masking is a very fast, very easy way to make a complex selection. Instead of using those lasso tools, we're just going to make a very quick mask over the mountains. Okay, so stop and do that. Now we're going to get out of mask mode, so just click on the quick mask option. It's going to send us back to a selection. But we want to select the mountains. Right now it's blocking everything else, so we want to go to select, inverse, and it should be just the mountain range that's selected. Okay, it's just the mountain range. Now we're going to do a keyboard shortcut here. Because what we're doing is we're making just a copy of just the mountains. So I'm going to hit Control J on my keyboard. If you look, it should be your layer 12, it's just the mountain range. On your layer 1 copy, delete that. We don't need it anymore. So now you should have just the mountain range on its own. Now you can overlap it in front of everything else. Okay? You can go ahead and turn your skyline back on. And if you want to do any fine tuning, I feel like my Godzilla needs to be a little bit bigger. There we go, Godzilla's a little bit bigger. I'm going to move my bird. I feel like he needs to be in front. There you go. All right, so we have done a lot here, guys. We have learned how to, I'm reviewing, I'm going back all the way through. We've learned how to use the gradient tool on layer masks. We've learned how to use our elliptical, any of the marquee tools to create a layer mask. We've learned how to, and reviewed clipping masks, how you can use just black paint, such as a shape layer or a brush layer, to apply those as clipping masks. We've learned how to use gray to do transparent or semi-transparent masks. You've learned how to use a quick mask to create copies of layers for overlapping purposes. Okay, so we've learned a lot today. Hopefully some of this sticks because you're going to use much of this in your very last formal project. Good job, everyone.